think these things are complex, you know, and I've always felt it was circumstantial because of what had happened to me. You know, as a kid, I'd always been a very positive person. It hadn't been anything I'd suffered with up until this point. And, you know, my life felt completely out of control. And, you know, I suffered with an eating disorder as well. And I think with many people, it's a form of control. It's one of the only things you can control when your life is in such a chaotic state. Yeah, I think dealing with the things you deal with, being thrust into the public eye on that level, nothing can prepare you for that. You know, reading about yourself in the media, everybody's opinion on you being photographed, being criticised, not only the way that you look, your personality, what you say, what you don't say, your talent, all of these things. And it's a lot to take on board as a young person. And I think I'm also a very sensitive person, as many artists are, you know. So I just think it was the pressure I put myself under, the pressure us girls put each other under. I think it was just all of those things rolled into one. An unsustainable lifestyle, you're travelling constantly, I wasn't nourishing myself properly, I was obsessively exercising, and one day my body just took over my mind and said, this has to stop. And that was when I was diagnosed with depression in 2000. Well, I think, you know, a saving grace of the Spice Girls is that everything that we said and the way that we looked and presented ourselves was true. You know, we never set out to be a band that wanted to talk about girl power and equality, but because of our experiences in the music industry, we realized that we had to. We had a voice and we had to use it. We encountered some sexism quite early on in our career. You know, we were told how boy bands ruled. You know, they sold the most records, they sold the most magazines when they were on the front covers, and that a girl band could never do that. A girl band could never match that. And we weren't having that, you know. Can you imagine? I mean, everyone knows the Spice Girls now. There was no way we were going to settle for that. So that gave us fire in our bellies, and that spurred us on, and that gave us a meaning, you know. It gave us our ethos. You know, we knew we had to be a girl band for girls. We had to do this. We had to prove people wrong. So we set out to do that. You know, little did we know that we would be inspiring not only lots of young girls, but lots of young boys. You know, we have an incredible following in the LGBTQ plus community, which kind of broadened our mission, really. You know, we wanted to stand for equality for all. And then when we, you know, the great thing about the Spice Girls is we are so different, you know, not only our personalities, but our appearance, you know, the way we present ourselves. And we were given our nicknames by a magazine here in the UK, by Top of the Pops magazine. And they just stuck. And we love them. And we've used them and became caricatures of ourselves. And yeah, I've never really had a nickname until I became Sporty Spice, so it's nice to have one. I mean, it's all very complex, but I did in some ways lose myself, I think. I did lose that essence of myself, you know, that we spoke about, or I didn't know who that was anymore. And I think it was due to many things, you know, the amount of pressure that we were under, that we also put pressure on ourselves. You know, we knew we had a responsibility. We had very young fans. I think we were probably the first band to have fans of like 4 or 5, and that, you know, that's heavy when you're in your 20s and you're growing up yourself, you're figuring out who you are, you're making mistakes like all young people do, but you can't really afford to because you're under the spotlight, you're being pursued by the media. So that was all quite difficult. I think being away from home, living on adrenaline a lot of the time as well, you know, different time zones, you know, working incredibly long hours, being away from your family and your friends. We didn't really socialise very often because we didn't have the time, you know, we were with each other. Our working life was sociable, but we never let loose. We didn't have the opportunity to hang out with our friends, and that was tough. And, you know, not only did our lives change, but our families' lives changed. I only really realise as I get older, our siblings' lives changed. And I think when somebody becomes that well known, a public figure, that it doesn't only affect that person, it affects everybody around them. And there's a kind of a recalibration that has to occur. And you kind of have to figure out who you are in this new world you inhabit. Two people I remember meeting, Celine Dion and Lionel Richie. And I remember them, giving us advice, like really good advice, about, being careful and, staying true to yourself. And I remember Lionel Richie was giving us like financial advice, it's so funny to think about those things. But we did, we met people that, Elton John was, obviously remains a very good friend of Victoria and David. There are artists out there who know the pitfalls, and some of them had suffered them and kind of reached out to us. And, Brian Adams is a great friend of mine and, a wonderful person to have in the industry who completely understands everything. So yeah, there are lovely people out there who always have words of wisdom, which is something I like to do myself now. And I was lucky enough to meet Billie Eilish last year and just had a little chat with her. And I think even without realizing, I said a few things to her that really struck a chord. And she's spoken publicly about how that's made her think about what's happening to her, and to try and be present and be in the moment. So it's kind of nice that I've had that experience from older artists, and now I'm able to do that for younger people. Yeah, do you know what's weird? It's like, as a young person, I think you are in the moment. You're so much in the moment that you don't think about the future. It's like you don't imagine the end of anything, and everything comes to an end, everything changes, So I kind of feel like a lot of my time in the Spice Girls in the 90s was so exciting, but so busy that sometimes we didn't know what day of the week it was, what continent we were on, and although you're present and in that moment, it's so hectic that you can't take it all in. I think it was partly having control over something when my whole life was out of control, or not in my control at least. I think it was also guilt. I was very successful. I was earning money that I never imagined possible. I'm from a very humble background, so I think there was some kind of guilt in there with that, and also that guilt that I didn't deserve what was happening to me, or I wasn't worthy of it. So I was trying in my kind of warped way to be worthy of it, and I felt like I had to be perfect, and part of that with the pressure of being in the public eye and of the media was that I had to look a certain way. And that made me very critical. I was kind of very policing myself constantly. It's incredibly hard. It's exhausting. That is what it is. It's so hard. I mean, I think we all have to do it to an extent. We all have bad days. And sometimes we just have to suck it up and get on with it, But I think doing it on a world stage was really, really tough. I mean, there were times when I, could barely get out of bed and I didn't want to leave the house. But then I had to go and, like you say, put on the happy face and be on a TV show. So that was really, really hard. But it makes you realise that we are so resilient, and we are so capable. I think just in general, people don't give themselves credit for what we're capable of. It's not always good, because sometimes you do have to stop. And I think my biggest regret really was not having professional help sooner, because I think I could have, I could have maybe got better quicker, or not have had to have suffered so much if I'd been able to get help sooner. But I wasn't ready. You can't do it until you're ready. I think it's difficult for people around you because, personally for me, and I know, sadly, so many people suffer with this, but if you have an eating disorder, you're very secretive. You don't want anybody to know, although it's very obvious, obviously, because it affects your appearance and your eating habits. You know, it's a sociable thing, eating. You know, people become aware very quickly that something's not quite right, but people don't know how to deal with it. And I think, you know, personally for me, I was embarrassed, I was in denial, and I didn't want to hear. You know, people did reach out to me and try and help me, but I didn't want to know. So that's, you know, the reason why, you know, it's hard for people, and you can't get help until you're ready.
Often when you're young and you're busy, you know, you're very much in the moment. But, you know, for myself and the other girls, we talk about how much of it we've forgotten. You know, so much of it is a blur. So when we've got back together, we toured in 2007, we did the Olympics here in London in 2012, and the shows last year. We're very conscious to just take everything in, and you know, to have those very vivid visual memories to remember forever. So I think that would be the thing, just really appreciate as much of it as you can.